This is episode 3 of Standing Out. Standing Out is a remarkable interview style podcast with the intention to highlight women and men making outstanding contributions in their field. I'd like to welcome our guest, Eric Darst, today. Eric Darst is a registered professional engineer, C-level executive, and he's run and owned companies for over 20 years. He has advanced knowledge across a wide spectrum of disciplines, including online video delivery, monetization, civil and building systems, engineering design, information technology, systems architecture, renewable and traditional energy technologies. Eric is also the founder of Flowh. Flowh is an advanced event calendar platform in the style of Twitter for personalization and organizational use. Eric, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Katrina. The pleasure is mine.
Thank you. So first question, so you've run and owned companies for 20 years. I would love to know how you got your start as an entrepreneur.
Well, my formal education is interesting because I have a bachelor's degree in sociology and mass communications, and then I have a master's degree in civil engineering. So I know that's kind of an odd switch.
An odd combo.
And it kind of gives you an idea of the fact that I'm never satisfied with what I know, and I'm always willing to try something different. So I guess that's the seed of my entrepreneurship. And then when I owned a company that did really high-end engineering software support services and training and what have you, we started getting involved. This was back in the early 90s. And we started getting involved in using online video for training purposes, and we called them lunchtime little theaters.
Okay.
So that we could train engineers on the use of the software over the lunch hour, and we could just do it from our offices, and then of course the engineering companies could do it in their conference rooms. And that is where I got bit by the internet. I thought this was a really interesting concept overall, and a great way to share all sorts of information. So that's where I really kind of turned on the entrepreneurial spirit at that point.
Do you find, in your career, do you find that most entrepreneurs can kind of relate to that story, and they too have stories of, that was the moment that I got bit. That's when I found out about this and kind of got hooked on being an entrepreneur?
I would think so. I think you'll find that most entrepreneurs are just never satisfied.
Yeah.
They always seem to want to go to the next thing, which is both good and bad. And so I think that most entrepreneurs will feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a point in time where that actually, kicks in? I don't know. For me, it definitely was, though.
I think it's interesting that you kind of lived it first and then committed to it, because, and I share this story about myself quite a bit, is that growing up, I didn't know that entrepreneur existed. And so when I was going to school, that wasn't even a thought on my radar. And so once I got into this field, I realized how excited I was about it and how much opportunity there is. And, I kind of got bit by that bug too.
Right. Well, I think maybe as a background in engineering, you could look at that as, well, that's just number crunching. But on the other hand, there's an awful lot of creation and design that goes into that. And that was always really exciting to me, is doing something new and different, and something that fits a niche or a problem, or something that I was frustrated with. I said, there's a better way to do this. And I think that was a lot of the challenge. And I think that spins into the entrepreneurial attitude quite a bit.
Right. So one of the things that I think is hardest for newbie entrepreneurs usually doesn't involve the actual technical skill side of thing. It's more on the personal side. So like the ego side, it's that feeling of, am I good enough? Do I know how to do this? Will this work? I'm wondering, did you feel that? Do you feel like that? How do you overcome it? Or do you just kind of work around it?
Well, that's an interesting question. As an owner of companies and someone who kind of ran these companies, there's one way of doing things in that world. But then when you start something new, it seems like it's a whole different set of talent and skills that you need. And I had to step back and sort of relearn some things or ask myself those kinds of questions. And I hate to be flippant about this, but in so many ways, technology is just technology. And you can use it and solve just about anything. The real challenge is finding ways to make that understood by your market. So it's a message problem, it's a marketing problem, much more so than just a technology problem. And I think that's where I had to step back and reevaluate what I was doing and what my skill set was and learn from that. So the technology is just the starting point of what you really need to do. And I'm in the throes of that right now with Flowh.
Yeah, so that's interesting. And I bet a lot of people listening are in that exact spot. They came up with this brilliant technology. Maybe it's a wearable item or something online or in the cloud, but yet it's not packaged in that way where it's ready to bring to market and where the target market will understand what it is and feel compelled to purchase it. Like, tell me about that, because I do know you are in that piece right now, and I think Flowh is amazing and you've done great things on that piece, quite honestly. So any secrets or words of wisdom to share?
Well, I'll tell you what I know today, which may be different tomorrow. But what I know today is this. It used to be the phrase was location, location, location for startups. And now it's message, message, message. I really believe that. And what I've discovered is you just throw things out there and you figure out when the marketplace goes, oh, I get it. That's what you're looking for. And it takes a lot of effort because you're so embedded in your product that you know it inside and out. And so you have your way of talking about it, which may make no sense to your target market. And so you have to step back and ask yourself, what is it that I can tell them that will get them to understand the product as quickly as possible with as little pain as possible? And that's an ongoing process, especially with a product like Flowh, where it really touches multiple markets depending upon what it is you want it to do.
What I like about that advice is it just brought me back to that moment where I was introducing you and sharing a sentence or two about what Flowh is. And as I was speaking that part that says, in the style of Twitter for personal and organizational use, instantly I felt like, oh, well, I know what Twitter looks like, so it must be something that's easy to use like that, right? And so I think that little piece of messaging you got so spot on. So sharing that location, location, location versus message, 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 I think that's great advice.
Well, we've gone round and round and round on all of that too, and there's always a recommendation that you should say something related to an existing product that people know, because it makes it easier for you to leverage off of that existing knowledge. You don't have to start from scratch teaching somebody. Right. Now, if I say that to somebody who doesn't have any Twitter experience, and I'm trying to explain to them what retweet is, it's like, oh my gosh, I just have no clue what I am talking about.
Right.
And so it just depends, again, on who your audience is and your target. So if we're going after family households, I probably don't put a lot of effort into talking about the Twitter for calendars. I talk about being able to gather all your calendars into one place with one click and keeping track of everything going on in your family. Okay, that's completely different than what I would say to others, like the 19 or 21 to 34-year-olds, when I can just simply say it's the Twitter of calendars, it's the Pinterest of calendars, and they all go, oh, I get it.
Right.
So it depends on who you're talking to.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. If you had a list of best kept secrets, whether they're websites, books, TED Talks, that you would recommend, what would you include and why?
Wow. I spend a lot of time researching online. Does that mean one specific thing? Not really. I think TED Talks are great for inspiration and for getting you to realize that you should open up your thinking quite a bit more than where you are. I think that's really important. Early on, I went to a lot of the startup and entrepreneurial events that take place around the state, and believe me, there are lots of them. One of the calendars that we support is called Colorado Entrepreneur, and you won't believe how many events are taking place
every day. It seems like.
So I go to those, or I used to go to those quite a bit, but then it became redundant after a while. I would hear the same thing over and over again. I go, okay, I get this. And then what I discovered, probably one of the best resources that I've found, is other people. Yeah. Asking questions, drawing information out of them, getting them to tell me what they think. And because everybody has their own expertise, and lots of that expertise you can develop and use on your own as well. So believe it or not, I think one of the best resources for information is literally just talking to as many people as you can.
That's so interesting. With everything we have with social and all of the events and meetups and things like that, sometimes it goes so much back to the basics of building relationships, asking questions, getting honest, thoughts and feedback on that. Right.
And you have to be careful, because some of them you should really listen to. And others you go, okay, and they'll tend to redirect you a lot if you're not careful. So you have to stay on task as best you can. But there are times when I've looked back on some of the conversations I've had, and they said something that was important. I didn't listen to them. And then I come back a year later going, why did I not listen to that comment and pay attention to what he said or she said? Because now I see that it makes a lot of sense. Well, how do you know? You don't know until you throw it out there and see what happens.
And it's such a fine line too, because as entrepreneurs, we're also busy and we have millions of things going on at any given time. And so we want to make sure we're targeted and our eye isn't going off the ball, so to speak. Yeah. And so we want to stay on target. But then I totally see and get your point of sometimes, we need to just make sure our ears are open and our minds are open to make sure we are hearing what other people say, because it really could be a valid, great idea too.
Well, I think time management is really important, and setting aside time during the week where you can, flush your mind of all the day-to-day details that you're doing and go and do a little research or go and talk to people or go to lunch with somebody. I think that's really smart. And even in some ways, drop off grid for a little while. Take a walk, think things through. I think those are really important. And I find that I do that quite a bit.
How do you make that happen? I'm one of those people where I see it, I get the value, I would love to do that, and then I just book my week solid. Like, do you just block it out on your calendar, or are you just really committed and you make it happen regardless?
I try to, and there are times everybody's different as far as the way they use their day. Mm-hmm. I'm a morning person. I get up very early and I answer much of the emails and do a lot of that kind of grunt work earlier in the day. And that gives me an opportunity to spend some time in the afternoon kind of sitting back and asking myself some questions about, am I heading the right direction? Is this right or is it wrong? And that's useful for me. And do I block out time? I wish I was that structured, but it never happens that way. Best intentions, but
Right. I can see that. One of the best pieces of marketing advice I've ever been given is grow an audience before you need it. And yes, I think that's true on social media and email marketing, but I think it's also true in just what you're saying. Go to lunch with people, build a network of people who are going to support you. And I'm wondering if you've heard the same thing and if this philosophy has served you in your career.
Well, that's a really good question. If you're doing something that's truly disruptive, which I think Flowh is, because it's social media for calendars, which and there's a lot of those startups in the graveyard, I should tell you that. There's been a lot of attempts at that. Okay. but it is disruptive. So you ask yourself the question, well, it's not so much a market, but it's a need. And so then we have to tell the market, they have to somehow get the market to understand that this is a need that they really have. And sometimes you don't have, quote, a market, but you have a product that ultimately is going to solve a lot of people's problems. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because when I first talk to people in the marketplace and tell them what it is, they kind of go, oh, yeah, okay. But then when I start to show them and they spend a little time on it, they go, oh my gosh, this will save me so much time, or it will do all these things for me. So there's this threshold. There's this point where you have to cross over from getting them just to at least understand what you're doing to actually having them say, this is something that I really need to use. I get it now. I get it. And that's really a tough threshold to cross.
Right. Right. What do you say? So that's interesting that you had just mentioned there's a lot of companies similar to Flowh in the graveyard. As an entrepreneur, I would love to know, I'm sure you knew that going into this. What made you persevere and go for this anyway? Like, what, well, you know what I mean? Because
I do. And there's a thin line between perseverance and insanity.
Right. And you're walking it to
I am constantly walking on that line, I tell you. And so you ask yourself the question, when do you think it's time to give up? And unfortunately, I'm of the character that that doesn't happen. So here's what I see. I've seen a lot of attempts out there, and I've seen what they've done right and what they've done wrong. There are some really great postmortems that you can find online for those kinds of things. A good example is a company called Plancast. They attempted a social media style event thing where content was generated by the users. Okay. It was a great idea, and they had a really good following in San Francisco because, of course, that's a circle of network that will start things, but they couldn't push it out of San Francisco. And so the fellow that was the CEO of the company, they went through this massive pivot to something entirely different. He wrote a postmortem on what he saw right and wrong about Plancast. Those are gold. If you can find those kinds of things and read them, you are literally learning from other people's mistakes. And so what we did from that is we said, okay, we get it. What we're going to do is we're going to change the approach to the market so that we think that we can solve the problems that not only the market has, but that the other startups who failed ran into as well. So that's what we do. We spend a lot of time looking at, believe it or not, looking at failures is really, really valuable for us.
That sounds like a gold mine. I love that approach.
Yeah, it works for us.
Yeah, right. That's true. Good tip. What do you think? Well, wait, let me back up. So
okay.
When you're having some of those tougher days, when you're walking that line of insanity versus perseverance, what do you do to get through a tough day?
Well, here's what happens. I'm just about ready to throw in the towel and give up and say, I can't do this anymore. There's too much sacrifice involved. And then I get a client who takes on the product and goes, oh my gosh, this thing is the greatest thing since sliced bread. It can do all these things for me, and I get this glimmer of value that is fed back to me. And then it just opens up my excitement again. I go, oh my gosh, we now have the Denver Center organization. We now have the Colorado Creative Industries company or department division is now using our tool across the state. This is great, and it reinvigorates me. And so I almost, you may think this is crazy, but I almost say to myself once in a while, I wish they hadn't done that to me. Because I said, then I'm done.
Right in.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm okay with it. But no, when it's needed, something comes up where they say, this is a great solution and we're really happy with it. I go, okay, that means I got to keep going at this thing because I know I can solve people's problems if I can get the market size and the growth where it needs to be. So, and you made a comment early on about entrepreneurs having these different skill sets. I've always kind of talked about what I've described as the first 10,000. And what that is, and it doesn't have to be 10,000, that's just an arbitrary number, but finding yourself going from your technology to getting the first series of clients, whether they're paying or not paying, it doesn't matter. Adopting, using your product, and taking the product to the next step and continuing to use the product. That first phase of getting your first X number of clients is probably the most difficult thing that you can do as an entrepreneur. And I find, surprisingly, that there's not that much support out there for this, as they say, the chasm, the first 10,000. There's a lot that talks about how you start, how you develop your company, how you do all these things, but the step into the marketing world and the step into generating your first set of clients is something that's not supported that much. And if it is, it's usually by consultants who are quite high priced. And that's not what you can do when you're at a startup stage. So.
And you know what's interesting about that first 10,000 is those are the days where you have such highs of, you just had a new client come on and they believe in it, they're ready to use it. And then you have those lows of, oh, I have to get more. Like, it's just such a roller coaster. And I think we all need support through that.
Yes. And then, of course, in the background, when all that's going on, as you bring on more and more clients, is your challenges for scalability.
Right.
And boy, those come in pretty fast once you start getting a lot of people to use your product. And that's where you need to spend the time and the money back in the technology world, is when you have to, okay, I built this thing. It's, baling wire and duct tape. Now I've got clients and they're actually using it. I have to step back now and figure out how I can turn that into a scalable solution. And that's expensive. And that takes a lot of time away from doing everything else, which is going to your market and supporting your market and doing all those kinds of things. So that's a really interesting challenge. And that's where you hope you can get the funding to come in and say, we'll help you build your product out and make it scalable because you've demonstrated that there's a need out there.
Mm-hmm. I think so many startups can relate to that, particularly as you were saying that it used to be location, 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 and then messaging, messaging, messaging. I think in the startup world, everyone is looking at their product or service from the lens of, is this scalable?
Yes. Well, there's two questions there. One is this a product that does have scale? I mean, is there a way that it can scale? Not technically, but are you such a narrow niche of marketplace that you're really never going to see a big scale, or is it a product that has the opportunity to really be big or scalable? That's your first question. Then the second question is, if it does have that opportunity, what does it take to support that?
Right.
And that's where the technology has to kick back in too. So, and that's where we are right now with Flowh.
Right. Well, as we wrap up, I would love to know, what's the important new trend we'll all be talking about next year? What's on your radar?
Oh, next year? Oh my gosh.
Next year, 1 year from 2016.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I don't even know what's going on tomorrow. I would say, well, mobile continues to take hold. There's no question about that. I think that the big trend is going to be in the way marketing is done. Because you're dealing with a different style of person now with the, I don't want to call them millennials. I think that's actually unfair, but the younger crowd who I think are given, I think people look at them in the wrong way, in my opinion. I think they're much more authentic and looking for products that give them an opportunity to be influencers. And so I think that the style of marketing is going to change. Right now, as you know, there's a lot of effort in the social media world for marketing. There's also an awful lot of noise in that world as well. And so I think there's going to be a lot of things done to improve on that and make the reach to the 19 or 21 to 34-year-olds much more effective than it is now.
That's good insight, and I think it's something that most of the listeners and most of these startups really need to be paying attention to, because that is a demographic that many of them are targeting.
Right, exactly, and it's a whole different style of. You see this in the large corporate world where they make attempts at reaching out to the younger, and you can smell it a mile away, and that's when I talk about you have to be authentic.
Right.
I think that's really important to the younger generation because they see through these things. They've been bombarded with advertising for so long that they're actually pretty good at knowing what's authentic and what isn't. And so I think that's really, really important. And I think that these days, I think we're going to find more and more push towards social awareness, social responsibility, social benefit. There's a lot of that goes on up in the Boulder area, and I know Boulder is a little unique in that regard, but I think that's really important. I think it's important that anything that you do as a company has that kind of value or benefit, or at least the image that it has a social value to it.
Right. We just actually, on our podcast before you, we interviewed Lizelle Van Buren from Women Who Start Up, and
yes.
she alluded to the same thing. She thinks these mission-driven companies are going to get a lot of investment in the next few years, and a lot of people are really paying attention to that, and how we as entrepreneurs can, yes, solve problems with our product or service, but also help people on a larger global scale.
I think mission driven is a really great, I think that's a great way of saying it. Absolutely. And if you ask us what Flow's mission is, we kind of say it tongue in cheek. We want everyone to push away from their digital device and go do something.
Ooh.
That's really what if you ask me for my social benefit, that's what it would be. Be social in the real world.
And I love that. And it goes back to and this was not planned, but it goes back to your earlier point of get out and have coffee with someone, go to lunch, go research something. And as connected as we are, that's still just important. We're humans and need that.
Well, I mean, I'm of the age where there was a time when it was social in the real world because that's all you had. But these days you can have so much entertainment and so much social just comes into your house through all these different types that come into your house. You don't necessarily have to leave. And I think that's really unfortunate. And that's where we would like to be able to help, is to keep people informed about all that's going on around them and things that they may be interested in, and inspire them to partake in that stuff. Mm-hmm. That's the idea.
Very good. Thank you so much for being here, Eric. I really appreciate it and wish you the best. And I'm glad you could share some of your insight with the Standing Out community.
Well, thanks, Katrina. This was really enjoyable, and best of luck with your podcasts.
Thank you.